All right, there we go. Starting to record. Here comes Pat. Pat's logging in. Let's let him in. Give it another minute or so if somebody else comes in. All right, got one or two more coming in and then we'll get started.
There we go.
All right, I think the last ones that I've added are on, so we can go ahead and get started. And just a reminder, everybody, this is being recorded, and I'll post it for you to see it and share later on, probably tomorrow. All right, well, thanks everybody for joining us tonight. I was hoping we could be together in person, but
live singing, and I just committed to
sounds
this
like
dream.
it was probably a good idea one more time to do it this way. Hopefully, but for the last two at the end of the year, we can get together in person, but we'll just have to play it by ear. All right, I don't see Ham on here, so it's open, it's up for grabs. Ned's looking like he's getting ready to click on his unmute. There we go. What you got, Ned?
Well, you need a motion?
You got a motion we can consider?
Yeah, I'll take place of Ham.
There you
Motion
go.
to approve the minutes and the treasurer's report is published.
All right, that sounds like a good idea. Do we have a second? Got a second from Richard. I saw first. All in favor? Any opposed? Any questions? Okay. All right. Well, glad y'all could join us. We'll see you next month. Thanks. Okay. All right. Let's see. That is the main thing to get out of the way first. Let's see, Joe. I know you've probably got a couple of things going on and you're good for announcements. What you got? And he's muted and not on, so he might know. There he goes.
Yep. Got tech class going. We will test next Monday night. I had 11 in the class last night. We'll probably have between 10 and 13 for testing out of the class. 3 of the people I know will not be 4 of the people will not be testing that were in the class. 2 of them are in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and they're going to be testing in Knoxville area. And one is going to test up in Atoka when they test, and then one other one will test at a later date.
A lot of ducks.
Anyway, Steve, you want to mute everybody?
Yeah, I'm getting it. I'm getting it.
Then after the tech class, we've got 6 already signed up for general starting November the 1st. I'm not sure whether it'll be 5 classes or 6 classes. I've got it set up for 6. If it's 6, it goes through December the 6th. If not, it'll be November the 29th when it tests. And I have a feeling that a few from this tech class will join the general class as well. I have a couple from the tech class that are studying not only tech but general. So that's that's good. And then probably an extra class starting the first week in January if it goes according to the normal schedule. But we will not do anything on that until the first part of December as to trying to set up a extra class. But if anybody's interested, they need to send me an email and I'll put them on the mailing list for information about the class. And then that is that. Steve, you want me to say something about
Yeah, go ahead.
We've been contacted by Karen Chancellor's AG4CC's sister about purchasing her gear. She does a lot of CW work, low power QRP CW, but she's got an ICOM 705, an ICOM 733, and several KX2s, as well as a Yaesu FT897 and a Kenwood TM281. We've thrown out an offer to her of $3,000 or consignment of 30% in the first 6 months, 50% from 6 months to a year, and then 75% we'd take after the year, since if it doesn't go in a year, it's a real hard sell. But anyway, she wants the 3,000, to where I make a motion that the club approves $3,000 for the purchase of that equipment. It's
Some equipment somebody wants to sell, it's something.
What is that?
I think she was talking to somebody else. I muted her.
Anyway, it's about $9,500 per list price, purchase price. And I looked on eHam and eBay, and it's coming up about $4,500, to where it's going to take us a while to sell some of it, particularly the QRP low power stuff, I think. And then there's some antennas. There's a HF loop antenna and some 30-foot, I guess they're fiberglass or some type of non-conductive 30-foot poles that she had antennas on top of, and some ballons, and some of the 705 has a box. The 897 has a box. The 7300 couldn't find a box on it. But there's a number of Renogy batteries, 200 amp hour Renogy batteries, a couple of 35 amp hour batteries. So there's quite a bit of stuff in the mix. We have to get it all inventoried for sure. But anyway, I make a motion that the club membership approve $3,000 for the purchase of that equipment.
Second.
Okay, got a motion in a second. Anybody have any questions or any problems? Like you said, there's 3 or 4 radios there that we can get the 3,000 out of really quick, and then there's quite a bit of other equipment. And we've been involved with some of these consignments before, and when they can drag on, it is just such a hassle to keep up with it that we suggested this time just to make an straight out offer and be done with it on our side and their side, and I think it's going to work. So.
And her stuff should be fairly new. She hadn't been a ham that long, has she, Joe?
Yes, she has.
Oh, has she?
Yeah, she's been a ham a while. I've forgotten she had a KG call, so it's been originally, I'm pretty sure it was a KG call. And that goes back to early 2000s. So she's been a ham 20 years probably.
That ICOM 705 is a pretty new radio.
Oh, it's, yeah. it's
That's a
only been out-
$1,300 purchase, new radio.
And the 7300s are going up in value right now too.
7300s are $1,200 now.
Yeah. So right, those two radios right there is, $2,000.
Couple of thousand.
So I think it's a safe bet for us. So, all right, we've got a motion, we've got a second. All in favor?
I'm in favor.
Favor? Any question, anybody strongly disagree? All right, I think we've got the majority and no strong objections. So Joe's been out there a couple of times. They're going to be out of town until the first part of next week. So we hopefully we'll get it next week. And if possible, I think we'll try to offer it up for sale in November and December, so that hopefully have some of the better part of it available for the end of the year if anybody wants it. So
Steve, can I ask, where is it going to be stored?
I'll probably keep it.
Yeah, I kind of figured that's why I was wondering.
Yeah, I'll keep it. It is. It's from what I've seen, from the list that I've seen, it's nothing really big, and it works out pretty good. I think we're down to 3 of the big bins that we had are empty now. So I think the biggest part of what she's got should fit in that. Okay. All right, thanks, Joe, and thanks for all that you've done getting that set up. Let's see. Next main thing on the agenda is the bylaws. But before we get into that, does anybody else have any other general announcements or anything to bring up? I see that John unmuted. You got something?
Yeah, I just want to mention we've got the October Aries meeting coming up Tuesday, October 26th. And then also something new this year that the National Weather Service is doing. They may have done it years past, but they have a fall Skywarn training going on. So anybody that missed the spring Skywarn training, you can go to weather.gov/MEG, and there's a link on there that shows Skywarn fall training. And I believe they have 4 sessions left, those being October 14th, October 18th, the 21st, and the 26th. And they're doing them virtual through GoToMeeting, but just in case you missed the spring Skywarn, you've got about 4 chances left to get it in before the end of 2021.
Okay. All right, thank you. I know people still probably got questions about the 8.2 repeater. Barry's been still working on that, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll have a better update on that. So, but it's still a work in progress, but it's looking like we're going to be making some progress here pretty soon, I hope, or at least know where we stand. Anybody else? All right. Mary Jean, did I guess you and I should have talked about this, but you've kind of been taking the lead on the bylaws. Do you want to see if anybody's got anything that they want to address, or was there anything that you needed to talk about before we take a vote? Or
Yeah, there's a few things that we wanted to address in there, so I can.
Okay, you should. I
share
should have a
some.
link to share.
All right. So we have not actually made any changes to this. The changes that we're going to propose to the proposed updates are going to be, there's just a few things. Let's see. So one of the changes, and there's two items that are this way, we just wanted to add of directors where it says board of directors right here, just to kind of keep that consistent. With another proposed change, after discussing it at the meeting, we wanted to add this sentence right here in 461 where it says the board of directors may change the day of the meeting with prior notice. Typically, this is not an issue, but every now and then, I think a few years ago, we had this as an issue where the first Tuesday of the month fell on, I think, New Year's Day. So this would just kind of give that flexibility with prior notice to change that around like holidays or if election day, if the board wanted to meet on a different day of the month, something like that. So that just gives that flexibility. Again, just of directors right here, makes that consistent. 5.4.4. We wanted to change the wording from shall to may. As long as I've been a member, and I think quite a long time before that, we've had a certificate of deposit or multiple certificates of deposits, but just in case, we want to make sure it's clear that it's not a requirement, but hopefully, well, that there may be one maintained and there's not one required to be maintained. And then the last thing, it's not a proposed change to this, but it just, since it was brought up at the last meeting, that we should look into whether we should clarify of members having the ability to request certain documents versus just anybody. The board discussed this at the meeting and we didn't think, we didn't want to recommend any changes just because we do publish the budget in Sparks, and the Sparks publication is made available on the website, which is public domain. So technically we put that out there. And so it's already available to the public, but so we didn't think just because we do that, that there need to be any change. So that, along with everything else, I mean, if there's any suggestions that someone wants to make that we change before we have the vote, we can certainly do that. It's up to you all, but yeah, that's all I have, Steve.
Okay, thank you. All right. Well, you know, and keeping in mind if there may be somebody on tonight's Zoom meeting that didn't join us, you know, last month and you know, didn't have all this presented, is, you know, but it's been in Sparks twice and we went over it pretty thoroughly last month. Does anybody have any, before we do a final vote, anybody have any questions, comments, concerns?
All right, well, Steve, in that case, I would like to make a motion that we approve the bylaws with the proposed changes or the proposed updates.
All right, I saw a second. Barry's right under me on the screen. I saw him raise his hand. So, all right, so we've got a motion to accept the updated bylaws as presented. We got a second. Do we all in favor? Anybody have a no that they want to voice? Well, heck, it only took us what, 5 years, but I think we've done it. All right. Mary Jean is looking very relieved.
I am. That was a long process, but we'll worth it. So
Well,
It was, but thank God for Zoom in this case.
I think Zoom was our blessing on this. I think it was because we could all see it and make it, and Mary Jean having that program where we could, she could do the changes and we could see them real time.
Yeah, let me commend Mary Jean. She did a fantastic job managing that.
Yeah, she did. She did a great job. All right, so that's done. Okay, anybody else have anything else? All right, well, I know that we've all been waited with anxious breath for Tom's presentation on Infad antennas, and I think we're ready for it, Tom, if you're ready.
Is he
There
there?
you go. All right.
He's combing his hair.
There we both of them.
Is he muted?
I don't know. I think he's just trying to get his screen going here.
Now, there we go.
There we go.
Finally figured it out. There it is, full screen mode. That help out?
Yeah, that looks good. That looks good.
Okay. All right. This is on the Infad half-wave antenna, and this is a good program that Steve Dick K1RF put together. You can find this on the internet without too much trouble. You just Google Infad half-wave antennas. Okay, so Infad half-wave antennas is a resonating element with electrical length of 1/2 wave. So it's same length as a dipole. And we all know the frequency or the number of feet to calculate is approximately 468 divided by the frequency in megahertz. And that gives you the length in feet of what your wire should be to resonate on that, whatever band you're going to do it on. So it's about a 72 ohm impedance in a dipole, and it can work third harmonic, but it's not necessarily good on other multiples of bands. So ideally, it's mainly a 2-band antenna. You can do an off center fed dipole, off center fed 30% to 70%, and that's a 200 ohm impedance when you move off the center. So you need a 4-to-1 balun to work that. Whoops. On an end-fed half-wave, when you take that same dipole and you want to feed it on the very end, on one end, then you've got a 2,000 to 4,000 ohm impedance. And that requires quite a bit of effort to bring down to 50 ohms. You either got a tap it circuit or a ZEP style coupling circuit or high impedance ratio 149 to 1, and that's the main one we're going to talk about is the 49 to 1, which means unbalanced to unbalanced. And the beauty of this antenna is it drops in on every multiple of the band. So you get like 8 or 9 of the bands on an 80-meter length wire when you do it this way. And it's very little tuning in the resonant area of the band. Now, like on the 80-meter, the lower bands are so broad that you'll need a pretty good tuner to, if you do the standard wire with the little coil that goes on it, that, what do they call that, a compensation coil. It's used to get the 12 and 10-meter band more into the voice section. Otherwise, you'd be above it, like in the FM portion of the 10-meter band if you didn't have that compensation coil. But it also lowers the 80-meter resonant frequency. So it's really tuned at the bottom of the 80-meter band. If you do digital modes with CW, that's perfect for you. But if you want to be in the voice section, you're going to have to use a heavy-duty tuner. Or later on, you'll see there's another method of solving that problem on 80 meters. All right, what are the advantages of the Infad half-wave? Number one, it's ease of installation. It's a real good portable or emergency antenna because it allows you to work any of the bands 80 through 10 meters in an emergency. It's quick to put up. It's fed low to the ground, and only one attachment point, depending on how you want to feed it. Maybe two if you're going to do inverted L or inverted V, where you need the center up in an apex situation. It's one simple length. You don't adjust the antenna length or anything. Once it's set up, it's there. Yeah, you can ground it DC, so you during high winds or lightning static crashes nearby, it'll go to DC ground. You can make shortened versions of it if you want so also. So anyway, here's kind of what it does. If it's resonant, usually around 3.57, a little lower, higher, depending on how you cut your antenna length. And you can spread that little coil out a little bit to raise the resonant frequency also, if you'd like to do that. So you can see times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you go all the way up the bands 80 through 10 meters. Now they don't mention 60 meters in here, but I've tuned it. It's maybe like a 5 SWR there. So if you got a heavy duty tuner, you can tune 60 meters also. So that adds another band that it'll do. And also you can do 160 meters, which I'll go over how to do that later on. All right, so it just gives a little description about 4-to-1 balance and 9-to-1 balance. The 4-to-1s are for 200 ohm stuff. So like if you had a full wave loop fed with coax, you'd use a 4-to-1 balance on it. I've got a SWR sweep. I just put my full wave loop back up, and you get to see how it resonates on all the bands, plus how the Infad does also. All right, so at low frequencies, like all transformers, they require adequate primary inductance at the lowest frequency. And this is some examples of variants of a modern ZEP antenna and a ladder line fed ZEP. The other one's a 4-to-1 balun or unun on it. And you got your off-center fed dipole on the bottom there. And all these antennas, there's pros and cons to them. All right. This is something Hawaii, a club in Hawaii put out this little matchbox kit to build for a balun. Now, here's another thing. Powdered iron toroids, they can be used on some of these transformers, but you can't use powdered iron toroid on the Infad half wave. It doesn't have enough permeability. All right, so here's some descriptions. Unun has a high impedance, 49-to-1 or 64-to-1. Not feasible to use transmission line transformers whose practical limit is only 16-to-1. It is a conventional transformer. You have to use a ferrite toroidal core, usually type 43 or 52. 4-to-1 and 9-to-1 transmission line ununs use powdered metal cores, and they're just too low permeability and not suited for the Infad half wave unun. All right, let's go on down. Now, primary inductance is too small at the low frequency and mismatch loss of significant and high VSWR results. High frequency performance suffers and VSWR climbs at the ends. So he says his rule of thumb is the inductive reactance should be 88 to 200 ohm range at the lowest frequency. So forth. Kind of gets in a little detail there. All right, the efficiency, good design should support efficiencies in a range of 80 to 90% efficiency for the antenna. For signal strength, it makes little difference. For dissipated power, the toroid makes a big difference. At 50 watts continuous, and 75% efficient toroids will dissipate 12.5 watts, and 50 watts continuous, and 85% efficient toroid, it cuts the power dissipation down to 7.5 watts, 60% of the 75% efficient toroid. Duty cycle is about 44% of continuous power, and single sideband duty cycle is 25%. All right, let's get down to the meat of it here on how to construct Infad half-wave unning. Okay, if you're gonna do low power, you can get away QRP, you can use one toroid and you'll be fine. But if you're gonna use a little higher power, you're gonna have to have 2 or 3 stacked toroids. Now these are the FT 240-43 mix or 52 mix toroids. You can get them at Mauser. Amadon is another good place. That's where I bought my toroids. The length of the wire is going to be like a 80-meter dipole, anywhere from 130, 134 foot of wire. Be 67 feet if you used a 40-meter wire. You use enameled or machine wire to wrap the transformer. All right, so as you can see, you start on the bottom, you twist 2 primary wires together, and you do 2 turns. Every inside turn of the core, it counts as 1 turn. So you have 2 primaries, then the 2 lines split. One goes, the left one, the red one goes to your center post on your SO239 that's feeding it. The twisted primaries at the start there on the right, they go to your ground and your ground lug, where you can put a wire going to a ground rod or a counterpoise fence or something like that. In between, there's a 100 picofarad capacitor, high voltage capacitor, and that's to stop primary inductance leakage. I think mostly on the upper bands. So you go 2 windings, it splits. You go to the SO239 center conductor coming in with the input, but then you continue on 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th turn is crossing over the middle back near the start. Then you got 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and then 14 turns, and then you feed your antenna. So this is a crossover method. Now, like I say, the more efficient toroid is 52 mix. We'll get into that a little later. All right, here's how the setup works. You got your rig, coax going. If you put a choke balun in, you have to put the choke balun on the rig side, not anywhere near the transformer or the unning, because the shield on the unning, if you don't have a good ground or counterpoise, is going to act as your counterpoise. They say no tune antenna or no counterpoise, but actually the shield will act as a counterpoise. So one guy quoted this to be a really extreme off-center fed antenna, if you don't get to the truth of it. So anyway, your choke will go close to the rig just to prevent any stray common mode currents going up into the rig and getting into your rig. All right, you mount it 1 to 10 feet from the ground, and actually lower is better. 3 feet would be better than 10 feet. Mine's about 5 foot, few inches, about head high. For me, I'm 5'8". All right, current flowing in the antenna's end must be equal at that end point by the same amount of current flowing into the ground or counterpoise of some type. It always counterpoise, even though the manufacturer said it doesn't need one, and all. And normally a counterpoise would be a quarter wavelength, but due to the high impedance of this type antenna, actually you can get away with 7 to 10 feet of counterpoise wire. And if you have that counterpoise wire going to ground rod or whatever, it will take the current flow off the shield. And if you can take it off the shield, it's better. More will go to the antenna on the output. But you can connect to a wire fence nearby and stuff like that, or put radios on if you want to. And you can see he's got links here on these pages for more information on counterpoise and other things. So if you find it on the online with Google, you get that extra information if you need it. It says, if choke balun needed, generally no, depending on the quality of your counterpoise, current splits between the counterpoise and the coax shield. You can use the choke balun, but it needs, like I said, to be near the rig end, not the feed line end. All right, now here's some looks at the ferrite materials. The 43 mix on top, 52 mix, and there's a 61 mix, but they don't recommend that. The permeability is too low, as you can see. Now the benefit of the 52 mix, and it's not quite, but almost double the price of the 43 toroids. Most manufacturers use 43 because it's cheaper and it's more cost effective for them. But as you can see, if you look at on the right, next to the last on the right, Curie temperature. That's the temperature of the toroids. They generate heat, especially the longer you transmit. So the 43 mix will let you get up around 130 degrees Celsius. And when you get too high on the heat temperature on these things, you start losing permeability, and you see SWR run too much power on one toroid or two. If you're doing 1500 watts, you need a 3 toroid, the 240, which is 2.4 outer diameter. So if you go to ferrite, a little more expensive, but high cost, but the core loss is capability. It goes up to 250 degrees centigrade. Real beneficial if you're running power. You won't overheat that core nearly as easily as a one core 43 mix. All right, now don't even consider the 61 down there. All right, now let's go to the capacitor that's supposed to be in there. They say use 100 picofarad to 110 picofarad capacitor in the matching circuit. It's placed across the primary of the onion to improve high frequency performance. It helps mainly, like I said, that primary leakage inductance.
All right.
Thought I heard somebody in the background. Okay. The ceramic disc blue cap high voltage capacitors are mainly used. And you probably need to get over 6 kilovolt to 10 kilovolt to be safe. I had some that were 30 kilovolt. That's kind of overkill, but you can do that. You can use those if you want to too, just if you got any laying around, as long as they're not lower than 6 kilovolts when you're doing 2 cores. Of course, with capacitors, you can buy the cheaper 200 picofarad caps, put them in series, and that'll lower it to 100 picofarads when you put them in series, and it'll increase the voltage capacity twice. So it cuts in half the picofarad rating and increases the voltage twice when you put them in series. I just got one main value capacitor at 101 picofarads on my system, and it's 30 kilovolt rated. So I had a bunch of those, so I used one of those. If you do QRP, you can get away with a silver mic, 100 picofarad, 500 volt capacitor. All right, this is just a graph that shows the leakage with and without the 100 picofarad capacitor. And you can see right here how they bad leakage. When they use the cap, then it curves down and you don't get all that leakage on the higher frequencies. Okay, what kind of SWRs can you expect all up and down the band? And this is an example here. You can see at 80 meters, 40, 30, 20, 17, 15, 12, and 10. And just take note, all of them are under a 2 SWR at the resonance spot in each of those bands. So very easily tunable on all the bands. Now, I've used a lot of different dipoles and fan dipoles and G5RVs and loops and all that. It's hard to beat a loop, but this installation, I've got a Infad half wave fed like a inverted V, or shaped like an inverted V in the center of my loop. And it hangs in there pretty good with the loop. The loop will went out most of the time. I won't even say most of the time. Sometimes the Infad's receiving a lot better than the loop does. It just depends on the patterns. You know, you get nulls in certain patterns in certain directions as you go up in frequency. So anyway, I'll give you now, let me see if I can get out of this full screen here. And I've got a sweep, and I use the new MFJ 425 sweep analyzer to do a full sweep with the software on the computer. Mini, what you call it, I forget software. You can get excellent sweeps of what's really going on with your antenna. So let's see here. I need to move that out of the way. This is a sweep on the Infad half wave that I've got. And is my box showing at the end of this picture, or you see mainly what the graph shows?
Talking about down at the bottom?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it.
You don't see pictures of people like I do, do you?
No.
Okay, good. All right, so you can see, look there on the left, that's that red M1 line. You look at the top, it shows you the frequency, 3.55 megahertz, 1.62 SWR. And you can see it right here on the graph, just over the 1.5 SWR line. Very, very good. Then 40 meters, come on down here, and you're right at 1.5 SWR there. This band here is close to the 30 meter band. They had the best dip at 10.7. That's our band's down at 10.100 to 150. But you get like about right in here, 2.8 to 3 SWR in the 30 meter band. Then you go up to the 20 meter band, and right here drops in at about a 1.65 or 7 SWR, and so forth. 17 meters there, 15 meters here, 1.75 there, I think. Does really good on 12 meters here, under about a 1.4. And then you've got under 1.5 in the part of the, I've got it up here on marker 2, 28.355. That's the voice section for technicians and everybody else, 1.45 SWR. So you see it drops in pretty good on all the bands. And that analyzer from MFJ, coupled with this software, IG Mini VNA software, does a real good job of showing exactly what's going on if you have multiple band antennas. I don't have a tri-band antenna, but I'm sure you can do it on it also, and it'll show you all 3 of your bands there and all on this software. Okay. All right. All right, now we'll talk about the compensation coil, which is to help lower the 12 and 10 meter resonance spots. Now you saw that the resonance spot on 10 meters was at 28.355 megahertz. Without that compensation coil, it would be 29.7 or 5, somewhere around in there on the resonance spot. So it helps bring down those top 2 bands into the voice, mainly use voice sections of those bands. And you can see it, the lower bands doesn't affect the drop in frequency quite as much, only 22 kilohertz on 80 meters and 50/70. As you go up in frequency, the drop is a little more drastic. It's a 1 megahertz drop at 10 meters. So man, they've got all this stuff figured out, I'll tell you. And it works really good. Now, I told you about solving that problem of if you do mainly voice on 80 meters. Well, if you're not going through a lot of tree limbs, you can add a 250 to 500, I think 300 is a good range, picofarad capacitor, same kind, the blue ceramic high voltage cap, in the exact center of your wire. So that would be about 65 feet out, somewhere around in there. And that will raise the resonant frequency on 80 meters up to 3.78, somewhere around in there, into the voice section of the 80 meter band. So now you got the best of both worlds. Your resonant voice on 80 meters, and you're also up on 10 meters and all the frequencies in between. It doesn't affect the upper band, it's mainly the 80 meter band. So that works great to solve that problem. Now here you can see, if you want to do a shortened antenna, you can put inductance coils and tune them for whatever you want and shorten your antenna as much as you want. I don't do any of that. This antenna, you can like go out, I say 45, 50 feet, do a turn, go another 45, 50 feet, do a turn, and finish up, and still work great. So if you got a small lot, you got to work around. You can just do kind of like a half square around it or something like that with an antenna. Now I mentioned being able to do 160 meters. And the way you do that is you make your little jumper. I've got some old twin lead, about a foot lead. I split it in half and I soldered one end to the center conductor of SO239 and the other to the ground side of it right at this point here. Now he's got an extra jumper in here where he's got his ground there, and he just screws this into the end here, and then he feeds the antenna right here. I unscrew this, take this off, and I got alligator clips on mine, and I just clip onto the wire here that goes to the antenna, and then the other wire I clip to the ground. And then you've got a quarter wave radiator on 160 meters. Sometimes I'll put out counterpoise wires, make it a little more efficient. But I've talked to Carbondale, Illinois on 160 meters at night doing this method here. So that works fine also. All right. When you build these antennas, let me show you a picture of a box. I go to either Lowe's or Home Depot, and you can buy a Carlin electrical junction box. This is 4x4 by 2 inches deep. I didn't want the 4-inch deep. I didn't need that much space. This is a 2-core, my first one I made. I don't have the capacitor in, which would go from here to here, from the primary over to the feed line. And anyway, there's your crossover, 2 primaries and on to turn 8, crossover, 6 more turns to 14 turns, and then that feeds the antenna out of this lug here. You do a wrap around here for support, keep the strain off of a feed point there. This is your air vent. You put the air vent in because, like I say, these toroids, if you stay on them pretty good long time, they'll start generating heat. Larry May's got one he bought from my antenna. He lives on Kirby Parkway, and he was running a lot of power on FT8, and that's more full duty cycle than sideband. Well, he actually melted the plastic hole in the side of the box because he was running too much power on a continuous mode type mode. So these boxes don't cost a whole lot, and you drill your holes in them to mount all your hardware in there. I'd recommend stainless steel hardware on everything on this antenna. This is a winding of 2-core here. And this is my 3-core high power box that I built into the summer. And you can see 1, 2, 3 cores in here. Now, I put those little felt strips you can buy at Walmart and places. They're good insulators. So I put a strip of that on the back there, and it kind of insulates the toroid so it doesn't get close to the plastic of the the box. And on the top plate that goes on, I have whatever, 2 or 3 of those strips, whatever. On a 2 toroid, I had to put like 4 or 5 strips to get pressure on the toroid to hold it in place good. But with your solder stuff here, it'll hold pretty good, but that'll keep it from moving a little bit if you do that. Plus, it'll insulate.
What kind of strip is that, Tom?
Those are little felt strips that you can get at Walmart. Some people buy the round ones for going under your furniture to slide on the floor and stuff.
Oh, okay.
They're real cheap, easy to find in the hobby section, I guess, or wherever at places. All right, let's see here. I'll show you. This is my, and it's not critical. This was wound on a 1-inch diameter. They recommend a 1.25-inch diameter coil, but there's 6 turns. My antennas does a hole where they come in, they wrap around here, and then they come out and start doing the loops. Then it comes out here, goes here, wraps around and comes out. And that's mainly for real strong support. I looked at MFJs, it looked like they just come in on the top here, go under and start their loops, and then come out here and go straight to the antenna. They didn't put that extra turn in there for support. But this worked just as good as the 1.25 wrap that I did on a modern, well, this one here is the one I just did this summer. And that's fed on that's a PVC coupler with 2 PVC pipes. That's 1.25 outer diameter, and there's 6 turns on it. And I did the extra supportive loop like my antennas does on that. I got a little eye lug here soldered on the end that just fits over the quarter screw that's in the mounting of the box. All right, at night I took a picture of my setup. This is about 5 feet, 5 or 6 inches above ground. Feed line here. I'm going to a polyphaser or a surge protector here that's hooked to the ground rod. But here's my ground lug, that extra ground you can put on that goes to the ground rod right there. And then I come out and this curves up, slopes up to a tree. This was, I was feeding as an inverted V, my first time doing it. You see a little better picture of it here, and it starts to slope up. There's your compensation coil right here. Those are slow shutter speed with a raindrop coming down. Okay, I didn't show you this. I mentioned a graph on the 160 meter. This is how it turned out. Since you're at the low end of 80 meters on resonant, when you get to 160 meters, it's resonant down here at 1.72, just below the 80 meter, bottom of the 80 meter band, which is right about in here where M1 is at 1.66 SWR. But you can tune on up if you got a good tuner up in the 5 SWR range. So that's a graph of what that looked like. The inverted V set up with 131 foot long wire. This was inverted V with the new wire I just showed you. And it had a real good curve, especially on the middle bands right in here, all at about the 1.5 area. And we have about a 1.8 on 10 meters over there. And let's see. This is my current SWR curve I've got now on my wire as an inverted V setup. Not quite as low in some of these bands, but all under 2. And pretty good, real good on 80 meters, 1.6 something, 6.2 on the resonant spot there. Now I did one time just experiment. I sloped up almost like a vertical over an 80-foot tree. And I don't know if just being near the quarter wave height of 80 meters helped it, but it brought that SWR down to a 1.4 on 80 meters there. And still the rest of them are under 2 SWR there. So that worked pretty good, but it was a lot of movement in the upper part of the tree during high winds. So I decided not to do it that way. And this was well, I already showed you that one, excuse me. So anyway, that's most of those. Let's continue on now. I've got some other pictures I can show also. That was mainly talking about the vent to cool the rigs. Hope I'm not boring everybody here. Let's just show some recommended unend configurations for QRP, 100 watts plus, and high power. And you see he's using the 52 mixes right here for these high power applications. And my last one I made was 52 mix. And I haven't had any overheating problems at all. You know, when you're in the height of the summer and it's 95 outside and that box is in the sun and then you're transmitting a long time and you don't have enough cores wound, you'll overheat that box real quick. So it's something to think about. All right, what are some common errors in building homebrew? Wrong toroid materials we went over. Don't put insulation on. Some people you see on YouTube, they'll put insulation tape on the toroid before they wrap it. It's not needed. It may degrade performance with that air gap. Counting the wrong number of turns, and sometimes that gets confusing. I know it was a little confusing to me starting, but if you count the turns through the center as one, you won't be inclined to mess up. And they're not hard to build, these things. And I'll tell you one reason for building it, it'll be anywhere from $40 or $50 to $70, depending on what parts you buy and what the quality is of them, compared to $200 and something dollars, mid 200 range to high 200 range for the high power ones for my antenna. So you get out a lot cheaper if you build your own, and they work just as good. The one I built actually tuned up better than the my antenna ones I bought. I did buy one commercial one just to try it out. And I took that box apart and looked at it, and they had done 7 turns and crossed over and did 7 turns on the other side instead of 8 and 6. I don't know what the benefit was that, and the turns were closer together on the primary side than after the crossover. So I don't know. It didn't help it tune up any better than mine did doing the regular spacing. All right, here's some websites that you can go to. There's your my antenna one on the top. MFJ's got if you want a cheaper model that's, I think theirs is good for 200 watts. Theirs is about 100 and something dollars for their model of the Infad half-wave. So you might want to look at MFJ if you don't want to spend a lot of money for the my antenna type ones. This is just a QRP setup here. He's got 3 primary windings on his. And it looks like more turns. Let me show some examples of it. Source of materials. You can get stuff at Amazon. Your Carlin box I mentioned right here at Home Depot. Cable ties and stuff on Amazon and eBay. There you got a lot of resources here if anybody wants to copy some of those. Okay, and that's all of
What's the
that.
guy's name? Last
Pardon?
name? What's his first name?
The guy that did this PDF file?
Yes.
Okay, let me go back up to the top here. Steve Dick, K1RF. Like I say, this is a good portable antenna for emergency stuff also. Let me show you now some let's see here. Got a few other pictures here before we end up. All right, right here. This is an example of my antennas. And you can see here, right here, that's midway around all these turns of the 130-foot wire. That's your picofarad, 300 picofarad capacitor to bring up the 80-meter band. As you can see here, they term these 75-10. That means 75 meters to 10 meters. So it's up in the resonant spots at 75 meters, not 80 meters. So it's in the voice section of the band. And this is their 2000 watt plus model. Now, they use a different evaluation of power handling capability. It's called International Commercial and Amateur something. I forget what it is. It's a little confusing, but it's for part duty cycle ratings and all that stuff. ICAS is what they call it. And intermittent commercial and antenna systems, I think is what it stands for, something like that. But that's their high power version on that one. Let's see here. This is a really good choke my antennas puts out. I mean, it's a high quality choke. Instead of you having to do snap-on toroid chokes and all that stuff, it's an isolator, RF isolator, RF choke, noise suppressor also, common mode filter. It works really good. So you might consider that. Now, it's not cheap as you would expect. This is a picture of when I took the commercial my antennas I was telling you about. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 turns, and then he crossed over and he spread out these. The reason of spreading out here is as you get to the end, your resistance increases. There's more heat generation, I think, on this side is why they spaced them apart. This is my version here I wrap, and that's my 30 kilovolt, 101 picofarad capacitor going from the center post here to the ground lug here. You attach your ground wire to your ground rod here, and you feed your antenna from this one. Do a loop here and a tie to take the strain off of the connection here with a little eye loop on the end of your wire that you put on here and screw down with a wing nut. That's their commercial box. This was a 2 kilowatt version here. Now you notice they're using only 2 toroids, but they're the big diameter. I think they're over 3-inch diameter. So these 2 equal the smaller 3 I've got here. All right. They do make a 1 megahertz to 10 meter version, and it would be wrapped something similar here. They don't do the crossover on it. It's 3 primary turns. Then you feed from your feed line here. And then it wraps on to 21 turns and then feeds the antenna. I asked Steve Ellington, he does a lot of YouTube videos, if he had tried this to see if it was more efficient or not and all that. And he was back with something off the wall, didn't even answer my question. I didn't want to spend extra money to try to experiment with it. I can do the quarter wave thing if I want to do 160 meters on it. Well, that's I wanted to show you on I've got an ICOM 7610, but this was on my ICOM 7300. And this, actually the rig read a little better on some of the bands than the graph showed, but this was at the resonant spot on 80 meters, 3.565, well under 1.5 SWR there. Going up 40 meters, it was a little over 1.5, about 1.6 SWR there at 7,100. At 20 meters, 14.150 megahertz, it was about a 1.4 SWR. Now, you know, it's funny, the 7300 has this SWR graph mode that you can do actual sweep inside using the radio. They didn't carry that over to the ICOM 7610, the more expensive rig. that's one of the 2 or 3 things that they didn't bring from the 7300 over to the ICOM 7610 that I wish they had brought over. But I've got the MFJ suite thing now, so I just use it. 15 meters here was barely over 1.5 SWR. And then the 10-meter band here was really low at that setup I was using at the time there. You can't hardly beat that. So as you can see, it tunes up better than a G5RV. G5RV, a lot of their resonant spots are well out of or near ham bands, but they're not in the ham bands. And of course, you got that ladder line to contend with. You can't have it near metal or buildings or anything. Here's some of the newer, they changed their box models on my antennas. That old black version I had, they've got these new boxes that really look good. And I haven't looked inside of one of those because I haven't purchased any of those, but these are the different types of Infeds they do, the 40-meter ones, 80 through 10, the 2K plus high power version there, 40 meters through 10 high power version there, and then the 75-meter with the picofarad capacitor halfway in the middle of the wire antenna. And that's the high power version there. So you got a lot of choices if you go to My Antenna's website, and that you can pick on to do all this. So I'll stop the share there, and hope everybody enjoyed that and got some good information on that. I highly recommend this antenna. I've used a lot of different type wire antennas, and barring the full wave loop, I think this all band antenna works good as any other that you can try. That's about it, Steve.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? If you do, don't ask me. Good grief. No, but I've got an Infad that I use, and I've got it for some of my portable type stuff, and it's easy to hook up. The way you showed it attached to the house, I think a lot of people, when they're setting up HF antenna, if they're doing a dipole, the problem is, you got your coax in the middle of the line, and how do you, sometimes it's kind of hard of where you're going to run your coax into the house, but the Infad, pretty
and
much
you'll use
solve
about
that
3
problem.
times. You'll use 3 times as much coax when you feed a dipole
Yeah.
apex 60 feet up in the tree, going back to the house with the coax and all that. So you don't have to fool with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that, I know that's anybody new to HF, that's usually one of your, questions, challenges, problems, and hopefully, if that was, if that was a little bit more than what you were looking for, if you're new to this, but if it kind of gives you an idea of another option of an antenna that you could use at your house, or if you're doing some mobile stuff, that is a good option. It's something that's not talked about too much. All right. The only other thing that I had, I think my cold medicine's about to wear off, so I'm about to fade. Next month is the election for the board of directors. We've still open the nominations. You can nominate yourself, or you can nominate your worst enemy, but if anybody wants to throw their name in the hat, we're looking, we're in pretty good shape right now. We've got a name for all the positions except for vice president. We're still working on that, but
Hey, Steve,
huh?
John Reiner said he'd be willing to serve as vice president
Oh,
if
good.
everybody votes that way. So
He's willing to put his name on the ballot and see how it comes out. Okay.
That's right. You can vote against me.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well then, actually, we're in pretty good shape then, and we'll, we'll post the names in the Sparks and have the election next month. But
Why don't, Steve?
yeah,
Why don't you name the positions now?
name it now.
Yeah.
Mary Jean is offered to move up to president. It sounds like John Reiners is vice president. Let's see, we're carrying over Carolyn as secretary. Mike as publications.
Jim,
Jim is-
treasurer.
Huh?
Jim, treasurer.
Jim is treasurer, and Joe, I cannot remember who you said was going to do programs.
Steve Romagny.
Okay.
I believe Steve is on tonight. Steve, are you on?
May have been earlier, but I don't see him now. Okay. All right, so we've got a pretty good mix. Mostly some people, well, most of the positions are carrying over, but a few new ones to bring some new blood in. And but seriously, if anybody else is interested, it does not have to be one person on the ballot for each position. We can actually vote on these things. Does anybody have anything else?
Yeah, I had a question for Tom. Oh,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Doug.
yeah, Tom, did you test the 40-meter version for those of us with smaller lots who can't really fit an 80-meter wire up there?
No, I haven't used the 40-meter wire link, but if you do like I say, like make 1, 2, 3 corners, is your lot so small you wouldn't be able to do that?
Well, I haven't really looked at that, but I was just looking at one straight line. I don't have an 80-meter
Yeah.
shot for one length.
But it'll work good in that configuration. I mean, it works kind of no matter how you put it up. There might be some slight variations in what works better over something else. But you can, guy, I saw a YouTube guy did, and he had a lot in a foreign country, and he went 1, 2, 3 turns around the edge of his little small lot, and he said it worked just fine like that.
Okay, thank you. I'll give it a shot.
All right. Anything else?
Hey, Steve, this is Tom Tebow. Hey, this is directed towards Tom. I just bought a MFJ Infad dipole for the 10 to 40, and it's 66 feet long. Here's the crazy part. I ordered it, and they said it'll be over 2 months, 10 weeks, 2 months, it'll get it. Then they send me an email 3 days later, say it's going to be later. And then 2 days later, it's in the mail. I cannot figure out what the heck happened anyway. So, but the other one is only 60, the one I got is 66 feet long, because I have it's the same problem with the lot problems. And so I'm getting ready to hook that thing up. So I'll try to report how that works for me next time around.
All right, let me know how that MFJ one works out. Martin builds a lot of equipment for ham stuff at an economical price, and his stuff works. And if it doesn't, they've been over backward to make it right for you. I noticed that about them. I lived in Starkville and was in that plant quite often.
I got some more questions, but I'll send you an email.
Okay.
Okay. And let's see here. Mary Jean sent me I guess it's to everybody, but like I said, if y'all didn't hear at the beginning of the meeting, I've had a cold all day long, and the cold medicine's really starting to kick in. I left out that Joe is returning as director of training, and we haven't overworked Scott Adams for director of meetings and special events. So he said he's willing to come back and actually do some work hopefully next year. So, but not to minimize what he has done, but if there was ever a year to be the director of meetings, and if there was ever 2 years to be the director of meetings and special events, Scott drew the lucky straw on that one. Okay. Anything else?
Yes, Steve, one announcement.
Yeah.
So we've been making this announcement, I guess for a month or so now. And so you've probably heard this, you may not have, but I just wanted to remind everyone that we do have a new weekly net, the 440 net, which is on the 443.700 frequency. The PL tone is 107.2, and it's got a +5 megahertz offset. So again, it's every Friday at 8:30. It's either at 8:30 or it's right after the Delta Club information net. So it's a great opportunity to bust out the 70 centimeter equipment. If you are to see how you can get into it. So far, it sounds like the reception has been phenomenal. So if you haven't checked in on it yet, I'd encourage you to do so. And if you're pretty new to amateur radio and you haven't quite tweaked with your settings to get off of the set frequencies already, you're welcome to email me, or I'm sure maybe Carolyn or any of the ones who have already been checking in, and I'm sure we'd be happy to try to help you figure out how to get your settings adjusted so you can check in with us. So we've been getting a pretty good group so far. So it'd be great to have everyone check in. 440 net.
Okay. Yep.
When are you going to get your X50 that's behind you up in the air?
Well, hopefully soon. So I had a wedding I was in this weekend, and I think now everything should slow down so I can finally get to do all the projects I really want to do. So hopefully this week.
All right. Anything else?
Yeah, it's Pat. I got one thing that I'll pass on.
Yes, sir.
Instead of using the Ballon in the box, I've used a Z1100 automatic antenna tuner, and I've used it on various Mars frequencies as well as amateur bands, and it works real well. I've just got an Infad piece of wire that's random length, and it works really well. I run a RG8. I'm set up out in the garage, and I'll run RG8 for about 150 or 200 feet of coax. The house is inside the Z11 Pro, and then I go to a ground in the Infad wire, and I can tune that anywhere, and it works pretty much broadband wherever I want it to work.
Yeah, Pat. Yeah, that's a good method. They used to call those antenna couplers when you're fed at the feed, when you have a coupler at the feed point, and it takes all them losses out of tuning through a coax and all, and it really works good. I used that on my dad's houseboat. I had a SGC smart tuner at the feed point, ran a 40-foot wire from the flying bridge back to the flagpole in the very back of a 60-foot long houseboat. And man, I worked Micronesia in the South Pacific. So antenna coupler at the feed point is a real good way to do an Infad.
Yep, works well. Back before I retired, I went up to about the 200-foot above ground on one of the towers at the transmitter site, 225 feet above ground at the 1,115-foot tower, and had about 500 total foot wire, and it talked.
Gangbusters, I bet.
Oh yeah.
All right, anything else? Hearing nothing, and guessing there's a bunch of empty glasses around. We have a motion to adjourn. All
So
right.
moved.
So moved. All in favor? Aye. All right.
Aye.
All right. As always, for Scott's benefit, don't forget to clean up around your areas and push your chairs under your table. And we will see you same channel, same time next month. Thank you. And hopefully we'll do it in person too, but we'll keep trying. All right. I'm stopping the recording and